Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about how to accelerate your progress in Kriya Yoga. So Kriya Yoga is a very effective practice for getting into internalization, into pratyahara. And it does this through the mechanism of Kriya pranayama, which is a form of intentional breathing that brings one into a low idle state. In particular, this leverages the body's parasympathetic nervous system. And by doing this intentional breathing, one starts to experience a sense withdrawal and internalization. This is experienced in terms of a variety of feelings throughout the body, tingling throughout the body as the senses start to turn inwards. And so what Kriya Yoga does very effectively is to tranquilize the body. So the sense of the body starts to disappear and one goes into a low idle state, and then one's awareness is tuned inwards. And as well, Kriya Yoga also tranquilizes the verbal formations, which is the intentionality of the thinking mind, the applied and sustained thought. And when the bodily formations are tranquilized, the body starts to disappear from one's awareness, and the verbal formations start to be tranquilized, where one's intentional thinking starts to fade into the background. One starts to go into a true internalized state. However, the aspect that is lacking from Kriya Yoga is the ability to tranquilize the mental formations. And these are the patterns that are laid down that condition the arising of one's consciousness. And really, these patterns, what are called samskaras, will start to show up in everyday life. And it's really what we often talk about in terms of patterns of reactivity to certain things. So the underlying tendencies when one has an experience of something is to incline towards a certain kind of reaction. And so really those are the karmic seeds that are in action in everyday life. And so these patterns that are normally acted on without really a true awareness of what is actually happening have consequences. They precipitate results. And this manifests in the everyday results of attraction or sensual craving towards sensual experiences, aversion or the reaction of wanting to push something away, or ignorance, the inability to realize the nature of phenomenal experiences. So while we can become aware of our reactions in the present, usually after the fact, because the awareness doesn't usually arise until the consequences have arisen as well, we often overlook a key thread in this whole process, and this is intentionality. So this intentionality in samskaras is usually overlooked because it is really an activating principle rather than an object of perception. So this intention is not a craving per se, but is one of the conditions that precipitates craving. It's like a string of code that threads its way through the matrix of perception. Now the good news is that although the intention threads its way through the matrix of perception, we have the ability to find it. Through our intuition, we are able to realize that intention. And when we're able to realize that intention, we're able to abandon it. So the intuition is available to all, but is usually obscured by a restless mind and body. The good thing is that Kriya Yoga has a very effective methodology for helping to calm mind and body. And from there, allow the intuition to start to surface. So when there is a restlessness in body and mind at the beginning of meditation, one engages in Kriya pranayama and associated practices, which help to calm the body. And by calming the body, they indirectly calm the mind. And then from there, if one is able to have an open, spacious awareness, one is able to recognize distractions of the mind as they arise. These are the manifestations of the 5 hindrances, which are sensual craving, aversion, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. And if any one of these hindrances arise in meditation, if one is able to recognize that that has happened, where one's attention has moved away from the object of meditation towards the hindrance, that is the arising of mindfulness. And from there, one can abandon those hindrances to let them go, returning to a wholesome state of mind and going back into meditation. So the process of recognizing and letting go of those hindrances is right effort. And right effort is the prevention of the arising of unwholesome states of mind. It is the abandoning of already arisen unwholesome states of mind. It is the arising of wholesome states of mind and the perpetuation of wholesome states of mind. And one normally goes through a process of right effort and abandons those distractions. But one can also, if one's mindfulness is keen, when those distractions arise, to actually see the intention behind that distraction, behind that hindrance. And this is what I was talking about before, the intentionality of samskaras, of karmic seeds. There's an intentionality there. So for example, if a feeling of frustration arises and one is able with clear mindfulness to recognize that this is happening in meditation, one can perceive that that frustration is rooted in the intention of ill will. And then one can abandon it, one can let it go. And by doing that, one will replace it with a wholesome intention, with the intention of loving kindness. Similarly, if a distracting thought arises about sexual desire, if one is able to recognize the intention of that which is rooted in sensual craving and abandon it, one can replace that unwholesome intention with a wholesome intention of equanimity. And as well, if one has a distracting thought of covetousness, and one is able to recognize the unwholesome intention in that of greed, and one is able to abandon that unwholesome intention and replace it with the wholesome intention of generosity, one is able to shift into a wholesome state of mind. This is the abandoning of the intention of the samskara, which is the underpinning of that distracting thought. So not only is one abandoning the distracting thought, one is abandoning the intention in which that distracting thought is rooted, which is much more powerful than just the distraction itself. It is really a process of reconditioning or reprogramming that code from an unwholesome intention to a wholesome intention. This changes the pattern for the next arising of one's consciousness, and a wholesome state arises. And this in turn leads spontaneously to a deeper state of meditative absorption. Now, another thing that you can do to help to develop your intuition so that your mindfulness is keen and you're able to see the intentionality of each thought that arises is to actually develop your ability to go deep in meditation. And the seat of intuition is the luminous mind or the quiet mind. And this is normally accessed in the 8th jhana, which is the realm of neither perception nor non-perception. And as one is going through these successively deeper states of meditation, one moves beyond the bliss of the 6th jhana, one releases that, lets go of any attachment, and moves into the 7th jhana, this perception of nothingness conjoined with equanimity. And if one is able to abandon any attachment to that state, one moves into this 8th jhana, this neither perception nor non-perception. The effect of this state is that it really has a filtering process of removing extraneous thoughts from one's mind. And if one moves through that barrier, if you will, through that veil, that filter, what happens is one gets into the quiet mind, pabhasara citta. And in this state, the mind is very, very quiet. And any thoughts that arise are really in a very fine seed form before they actually manifest into thought content. So it is like seeing the proto-thoughts or the seeds of thoughts before they arise. And if one's mindfulness is keen, one can continue to let go of those thoughts before they turn into something. So one can stay in this meditative state. What happens is that this state of neither perception nor non-perception, when one is in the quiet mind, the luminous mind, pabhasara citta, this is the seat of the intuition. There is this reflective quality of the unconditioned absolute, nibbana. When one has stripped away extraneous factors of the mind, is able to move into this quiet mind state, into this luminous mind state, one is able to receive clarity about all nature of phenomenal existence. It allows for the arising of the intuition, both in meditation and in everyday life. And hence one is able to very clearly see the intentionality within one's thoughts, because one's perception is enhanced with the intuition. And this in turn leads to a feedback process where one is letting go of more and more attachment, where one is abandoning unwholesome intentions. This abandoning of unwholesome intention is a hack for reprogramming one's karmic patterns near their source of origin, and is an effective way to accelerate one's progress in Kriya Yoga. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.